Hi, I'm Emily. This is my YouTube Wavy Hair Care, and I also blog at wavyhaircare.com. Today I'm going to get into wet styling and damp styling and why I personally prefer to damp style, but also just like the pros and cons of each. And so to start with, what even is wet styling and what is damp styling, right? You may well have been around like curly and wavy hair groups for a long time and have not seen these terms used. At least that was my experience. I did the curly girl method, I think, for maybe like 6 months or so before I came across these terms. So, in case that's you, wet styling is when you apply all of your styling products, mostly like your gel or your mousse, whatever you're using for hold, when your hair is still super wet. Some people will literally bring these products into the shower with them to use them like the second that they, finish washing their hair, rinsing their hair. For other people, they like step out of the shower, but it's still basically right away. Damp styling is when you try to get your hair a little bit dry before you apply your gel or mousse or whatever styler you're using. One really common way to damp style would be to shower, then wrap your hair in a plop without product in it, and then after plopping, then you would apply your products. So that's kind of what wet styling and damp styling are. When looking at like wavy and curly groups, I think wet styling is more popular or more commonly used than damp styling. Like I said, I didn't hear about these terms until I was like 6 months in. I thought everybody styled their hair when it was super wet. But once I did come across the idea of damp styling and I tried it, I liked it way more and have basically never really turned back. Today my hair was styled damp. I'm going to, on another day, do my hair with wet styling and show you guys a clip of that too, just so that you can kind of see the difference in how it works on my hair type at least. When I damp style, I do a regular plop. Some people prefer micro plopping. I'll leave links in the description box that go to blog posts of mine that talk about what is plopping and what is micro plopping, if you're not familiar with either of those. But I usually do regular plopping, and I've experimented with this on my own hair for trying 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour, different amounts of time. And I found that for my hair type, like 10 to 15 minutes is kind of my sweet spot of how long I like to plop before adding my products. It kind of seems to be the sweet spot as far as getting enough water out of my hair to like reduce the overall drying time and to get some of that extra water out of my hair without plopping for so long that my hair starts to like get too dry, or sometimes it will form like weird shapes and stuff if I let it dry too much in a plop. But I do think that the like right amount of time is really going to be dependent on your hair type, and I don't just mean like wavy or curly or whatever. I mean like how dense your hair is, how high porosity it is, things like that. My hair, I think more so than most people, really holds onto water. So 10 to 15 minutes for me might be closer to like the equivalent of like what 5 minutes of plopping would be for you if you have lower density hair or higher porosity hair. But you will likely need to experiment with different amounts of time to see what like the sweet spot is for damp styling is for you. The main reason why I prefer damp styling is that it saves me time. My hair is really dense, which I always kind of feel a little insecure saying that because I don't feel like my hair necessarily looks that dense, but whenever I've went to get my hair cut, like the stylists always comment on how much hair I have. I've always heard things like, you have enough hair for 3 people, or like my like most recent haircut, my stylist said, you have an insane amount of hair. And so my individual hairs are pretty fine, but I have a ton of hair. And a big part of that for me means that it takes forever for my hair to dry. Like air drying isn't really an option for me. If I use something like gel and then would try to air dry, my hair would literally stay wet for like 8 hours, which just, isn't practical when you're trying not to touch it that whole time and stuff. So a big part of like the burden of wash day for me is just the drying time. And even though I have the Dyson, which is, you know, well known for really reducing your drying time a lot, and it significantly improved my drying time versus like my kind of regular $30 hair dryer that I had before that. But even with the Dyson, it takes me like 45 minutes to dry my hair, and it's not crazy long or anything like that, and I have layers and stuff, but it still just takes a long time. And that's with damp styling. If I were to wet style, that would significantly increase my drying time even more, probably another half an hour or more of diffusing time by just adding gel when my hair is wetter, because gel kind of tries to lock in moisture, and I kind of don't want to do that because my hair already holds onto water so much. And I think it kind of makes sense that that's perhaps one of the big differences in who wants to wet style and who wants to damp style. Is a lot of people find that their hair curls up better, looks better, feels better if they hold on to as much moisture as possible. And that just isn't true for me. I feel like water is like, or, you know, as much water as possible isn't my best friend the way that it is for a lot of people with more tightly curly hair or even just drier, loosely wavy hair. So I don't want to hold on to all of the water. I want to get the water out. And so just getting some water out before I put the gel on makes a big difference. Even though I'm only plopping like 10 minutes, it probably saves me something like half an hour in diffusing time. And so I just really value that extra time because I'm already diffusing for 45 minutes. I don't want to be diffusing for well over an hour. So saving time is a huge benefit of damp styling for me. The other main reason I like damp styling is I get better volume. Water really tends to weigh my hair down. So when I have tried to air dry in the past, my hair is a lot straighter than it is when I diffuse, and a lot less like voluminous as well. And so I see some difference even in wet styling and damp styling just when it comes to volume. And I think that is just because, again, when you wet style, it locks more moisture in for longer, and that gives the water more time to weigh my hair down. So I get better volume with damp styling, and I like volume. I like big hair, so that's another big benefit for me. The third reason why I like to damp style is because I waste less product, or I guess just use less product. When my hair is really wet, it takes more product to get my hair well coated, and I think some of that is just because it will drip back out. But even if I like try to leave my hair so wet that it's not dripping, but that it's just really saturated, I just find that I have to use more product to get good coverage. And because I already have a lot of hair, I'm already using quite a lot of gel or quite a lot of mousse to get good coverage and to get a cast. And so I like not having to use as much product, and damp styling definitely makes a difference in how much product I need to use in order to get a cast. So saving on the amount of product that I go through each wash day is kind of my third main reason for preferring damp styling. While I personally really prefer damp styling, I think even for my hair type, where in my opinion it just works better than wet styling, I think there are still definitely trade-offs. And some of those trade-offs I thought I would go into in case these just aren't your like styling preferences. So one of the trade-offs is definition. I feel like a lot of times how much volume you get versus how much intense definition you get are kind of on a spectrum. Usually if you are really going for volume, you're going to lose definition, and if you're really going for definition, you're going to lose some volume. And so while I'm willing to let go of some definition because I prefer volume, if that's not your preference, then you might be somebody who would prefer to wet style because you're going to get better definition when you wet style. Another thing that I see as somewhat of a spectrum is volume and frizz. So wet styling is going to give you less frizz. Again, it's kind of like better definition and less frizz often go hand in hand. And so if I apply my products when my hair is soaking wet, my hair is going to be in like nearly perfect curl clumps. There's not going to be any stray hairs. There's not going to hardly be any frizz. Where if once my hair starts to dry a little bit, some of it's going to break up and my curl clumps are going to be a little bit smaller. So that's another trade-off. If you're somebody who really prioritizes big curl clumps, then wet styling is going to be the way to go. I don't really mind smaller curl clumps, and I think part of that goes back to hair type as well, because I feel like it's a little easier to not worry as much about smaller curl clumps if you have really dense hair, because you're going to have a bunch of small curl clumps. Where I can understand where somebody who has lower density hair might be more inclined to feel like their hair is stringy rather than just having smaller curl clumps. You know, I feel like even when my hair has smaller curl clumps, I don't usually feel like it's stringy exactly. It's just smaller curl clumps. But yeah, so those are really the trade-offs. Is damp styling is going to result in a little bit more frizz. It's going to result in less definition, and it's likely going to result in at least a little bit smaller curl clumps. For me personally, those aren't like my top styling preferences, and so I'm happy to trade off those things. But if those aren't your style preferences, then wet styling is likely to be better for you. The final point that I wanted to make is that sometimes if you're debating between wet styling or damp styling, it makes sense to consider what products you're using as well. Most of the products that I've tried using over the last few years seem to work fine on damp styling, but I have come across a few products that just really do not work for me when damp styling, and then I tried them while wet styling, like at the advice of other people who like these products, and I found that they do work fine with wet styling but not with damp styling. I think there are some products that they just really need to really be like significantly emulsified with water in order to work well. Just like off the top of my head, some common ones that I ran into that problem with were the Uncle Funky's curling custard, I think it's called. The it's like a curl enhancer that's really popular. That one, if I try to use that when damp styling, it will feel like I have glue in my hair or something. It just does really not work unless my hair is really soaking wet. And I think it actually has really similar ingredients to the Uncle Funky's, but another product that I had a similar experience with was the Kinky Curly Curling Custard. That one, it just feels really heavy and just kind of sits on my hair unless it's put in when my hair is really, really wet. For me, those two products and the other, I think the third one that I had experiences with was the Curlsmith In Shower Style Fixer. It's like a really thick, really sticky product, but it would just kind of like sit on my hair unless my hair was soaking wet. But I mean, that one's literally called the In Shower Style Fixer. So yeah, those three products like really need tons of water. Thankfully for me, none of those are like major favorites for me. I don't really mind just not using those products, so it wasn't a big trade-off for me. But if you're somebody who really loves those products, or I'm sure there are other products out there that just really work best on soaking wet hair, that may be another reason to consider wet styling. It's just which way works best with the favorite products that you have. So that's kind of my take on this. I know that damp styling isn't for everyone, but I significantly prefer it, and I sometimes run into people who just haven't even heard that it's a possibility. And so if you haven't tried it, I think it's definitely worth trying both ways at least once, just to see which one you actually prefer, because up until I had tried damp styling, I liked wet styling just fine. It certainly works for me, but once I tried damp styling, I realized that I liked it more. And so I just think it's one of those things that it's good to experiment with, just to make sure that there's not something out there that you might like better for your hair type, because everyone's a little different. I'd love to hear what your experience is with wet styling, with damp styling. Maybe leave your hair type, because I'm curious like how much that is a factor. I kind of suspect that finer hair and lower porosity hair might do better with damp styling than other hair types. But yeah, leave me a comment. Let me know your hair type. Let me know if you prefer wet styling or damp styling, and what kind of things do you think factor into that decision for you. I'd be curious to see what all goes into making that decision. See you guys next time.